the Longmuir pool. More about that later. Mr Longmuir was not able to be there, he was sick, and the Deputy Principal, Mr Bruce Gardner, under whom I served for quite a few years, responded on his behalf. On that day they opened up the dressing shed down the Oval in memory of Mr Percival Hindmarsh, and they also opened up the Piggery Road, which had been surfaced and sealed by a magnificent effort of scrounging. The firms that donated magnificent amounts of gravel and equipment and this and that were quite amazing, and they got the pool built. Hurlston is indeed proud to be the first state school in New South Wales to possess its own swimming pool, wrote the Harvester. The last speech I made for Hurlston, or at Hurlston, I did a bit of research about Keith Wilson. So I thought, fantastic technique, ask your classes what they know about so-and-so, and you get so much info, you really do something about it. So I asked kids, what do you know about the swimming pool? Any funny incidents? Dead silence. Class after class, dead silence. I said, or the dressing shed. And even more deathly silence. But one young lad in 7Y, Lindsay McDougall, said, yes sir, in 1963 the boys crept up on Gary Gray, who was asleep in his bed, and they lifted up the bed gently. Gary Gray, of course, played for Australia in rugby, and they took his bed down to the pool and they put him in the water, and he had to wake up, and there he was in this bed. And I've come to the conclusion that Gary Gray is the greatest bedwetter who ever lived. I was asked if I might do some reminiscing. Being a teacher, I want to speak on the 3 R's, and the first R will be reminiscing. Well, I first heard about Hurlston from Frank Blomberg, who was a kid at Coogee Public Primary School, and Frank and I eventually played for the Randwick 4C grade under 7 stone 3 once upon a time premiers, and we won our competition, and this was fantastic, and 3 of us were selected in the Sydney team, and I was one of them, and Frank was one of them, and there was another one of them, very important one of them to you fellas who were at this school in 1946. But anyway, Frank went to Hurlston. Every day he would travel out here and back again, and he would regale us with the most amazing tales of what happened here, of how the Piggery was just near the Oval. If you didn't play a good game of football, you were into the Piggery. Yeah, Frank, yeah. And he would tell us these tales, and on he would go. But anyway, in 1946 I came out to see for myself with Sydney High first 15, and we played down there on the Oval, of course, and this was a very important match. I think it was the first match of the season, and Hurlston were leading 3-0. Someone scored a try, and then in the northeast corner of the field, in the old days, somebody had to lie down on their side and hold the ball off the ground, because the moment you put it on the ground to kick a goal, they could charge out. Now, in the Randwick 4C grade, when Ronnie Booth kicked the goals, I held the ball. And Ronnie was in the Sydney High first, and so was I, so I held the ball. 3-3. I held the ball down on the Oval, and Ronnie kicked the goal. And we went on to win the CHS competition and also the GPS, the first team that had ever done that. So I have memories of Hurlston that are rather interesting. In the second Coogee Boy Scouts was Don Much. You don't know Don Much, but every time you look at the plaque that says this school was opened in 1927, I think, Tom Much, the Minister for Education, did it. I have been in the Much's house a number of times as a kid there with my 2 neighbours. You don't know who you know at times, do you? Well, anyway, that was Tom Much. Then, leaving Sydney High School, I went to Sydney University, and in 3rd year of university I received a cadetship, and part of my training was to go into the department